So I think this section is a little bit mislabeled. They call it cancer develops in several steps. This is mostly talking about how you can inherit a mutated gene. So inheriting cancer genes is very, very rare. It only counts for maybe 1 to 5% of all cancers. So most of the time, it's not a mutation that's happening in the germ cells. And germ cells are the same thing as reproductive cells. So unless you have a mutation occurring in a spermatogonia or an oogonia, you cannot inherit it. Most of the time, if you get a mutation in a cell, it's happening in a somatic cell, which are your body cells. Those make up 99+% of your body. It's only these germ cells that you can pass on a mutated gene. So for instance, if a spermatogonia, remember this is that diploid cell that will undergo meiosis in order to produce haploid gametes. And oogonia is the female equivalent that will undergo meiosis and produce our haploid gametes. So here you can see one chromosome of each pair. And then through fertilization, these will now come together and form a zygote. And now you'll have two copies again. This is the first cell of the diploid generation. But this one, the M stands for a mutation. So whenever you inherit, well, I can't say always, but most of the time, you're not going to have a mutation in both cells. It'll probably just be in one. So whenever you inherit a mutation, you're always going to be heterozygous for that mutation. So these two have equivalent genes at a particular place. So here's the gene, it's a non-mutated form. Here's the gene, it is a mutated form. So remember, if you have different alleles, non-mutated allele, a mutated allele, you are a heterozygote. So both may code for pinky shape, but one is now mutated. What has to happen now in order for that to become possibly cancerous, and this is what a lot of people can sometimes be concerned with, probably most famously recently, you've listened and heard about the breast cancer genes, the BRCA genes. So typically you're going to inherit one from, probably one from either your mom or your dad, unless you have what is called the loss of heterozygosity. That's not going to be a problem. So what happens in order for this to actually become an issue is you have a cell, and every cell that you have, because it's undergoing mitosis, so here's that initial zygote. So here's our cell, here is our gene, and here's the mutated form. It will undergo mitosis. It will create identical cells. We still have, and we have two cells that both have carried on that mutant gene. It's not until this one gets enough mutations in it that it also becomes mutated. So let's say over time, we now get enough mutations in this other chromosome. Now that you have two, you are homozygous. So this cell line would still go on normal. This cell line would still go on normal, meaning one gene mutated. But now we have two mutated genes in the same cell. When we go from here to here, this is what is known as loss of heterozygosity, or they give the abbreviation LOH. Now that we have a cell that both genes are mutated, this can put us on a track for cancer. But remember, the only way this starts, the only way that you can receive an inherited mutated allele is if you have germ cells that have a mutated allele in them. And that is only occurring in 1 to 5%. So a lot of people think that most cancer genes are inherited. They are not. That is the myth we need to bust.